we go. In his 2007 documentary, Banished, filmmaker Marco Williams examined four examples of primarily white communities violently rising up to force their African American neighbors to flee town. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It says 2007. I have never heard of this. So I'm going to go out and look for the documentary Banished. In fact, hopefully it's on YouTube somewhere. All right. But this became one of the techniques used to sabotage black land ownership, a devastating trend in the 19th and 20th centuries that robbed blacks of millions of generational wealth. In 2001, results of an 18-month investigation of black land lost in America were published by the Associated Press. It turned up 107 of these land takings, 57 of which were violent. The other cases involved trickery, legal manipulations. Here are 8 of these heartbreaking stories. Okay, so today, the town of Birmingham, Kentucky, lies under a floodway created in the 1940s. But at the start of the 20th century, it was a thriving tobacco town with a predominantly black population. It was also a battleground during a 5-year siege by white marauders called Night Riders, who evolved into the terrorist organization called the Ku Klux Klan. On the night of March 8th, 1908, about 100 armed whites on horseback raided the black part of the town, shooting 7 people, 3 of them fatally. The AP documented 14 cases where black land owners were driven from Birmingham. Together, they lost more than 60 acres of farmland and 21 city lots to whites, many at sheriff's sales, all for extremely low prices. Did y'all hear that last part? I said, many at sheriff's sales. So what that really means, if you didn't get that, is that the sheriff participated in this as well. And see, the reason this black fact today is so important, because if you remember the T's, there's a lot to talk about with police today. You got to know your history to know where you've been and where you're going, and that includes individuals, that includes a race of people, and that includes organizations and companies. Pierce City, Missouri. In Pierce City, Missouri, 1,000 armed whites burned down 5 black-owned houses and killed 4 blacks on August 18, 1901. Within 4 days, all of the town's 129 African Americans fled, never to return. According to a contemporary report in the Lawrence Chieftain newspaper, the AP documented the cases of 9 Pierce City blacks who lost a total of 30 acres of farmland and 10 city lots. Whites bought it all at bargain prices. Now, when I first read this, I'm going to be honest, I got annoyed. In fact, I got really upset. Ocoee, Florida. A total of 330 acres plus 48 city lots owned by 18 black families living in Ocoee, Florida, were lost after a violent Election Day attack on the black community in 1920. Known as the Ocoee Massacre, some were able to sell their land at a fair price, but most were not. In 2001, the land lost by the 18 Ocoee families, not including buildings now on it, is assessed by tax officials at more than $4.2 million, according to the AP report. The true market value is probably a lot more. City number 4, by the way, if you're just joining me, we're talking about black people who lost land through violence by 2 white people. Hickman, Kentucky. After midnight on August 4th, 1908, 50 hooded white men surrounded the home of a black farmer in Hickman, Kentucky named David Walker. The mob burned his house down after Walker shot at them and refused their orders to come out, according to contemporary newspaper accounts. Walker ran out of the burning house with 4 young children and his wife, who was carrying a baby in her arms. The mob shot them all, wounding 3 children and killing the others. Walker's oldest son died in the flames. No one was ever charged for these killings, and the surviving children were denied access to the land their father died defending. Land records show that the Walkers' 2.5-acre farm was added to the property of their white neighbor. The neighbor soon sold it to another man whose daughter owns the undeveloped land today. Now, last I checked, if I go out here on the street and someone walks up to me and they say, "Hey, I got this bad computer, man. I know you're a computer genius. You like computers. Would you be interested in buying this computer?" Okay, how much? Now, me knowing computers, I know that computer is probably worth close to $1,000. He sells it to me for $100. I say, "Oh, that's a great deal. I buy it." The computer has a tracking device on it. So when I open it up and start using it, short time later, the police come knocking on my door. And they say, "Hey, we understand that you have a computer in this house that sent us a code saying that it's stolen." And I say, "Hey, I didn't steal any computer. I bought this from a guy down on Main Street. What happens to that computer?" Well, I'll tell you what happens to that computer. That computer is confiscated, okay? And I could potentially be brought up on charges for what? Receiving stolen merchandise. So when the police confiscate that computer, what do? They typically gives it back to the owner. Y'all follow me? Holmes County, Mississippi. According to county residents, during the 1950s and 60s, Holmes County, Mississippi, Chevy dealer Norman Weathersby, then the only dealer in the area, required black farmers to put up their land as security for small loans for farm equipment and pickup trucks. Weathersby's accomplice, William E. Strider, ran the local Farm Home Association, the credit lifeline for many southern farmers. Area residents told AP that Strider, now dead, often delayed releasing the operating loans to black. When cash-poor farmers missed payments owed to Weathersby, he took their land. The documented 8 cases in which Weathersby acquired black-owned farms this way. He died in 1973, leaving more than 700 acres of this land to his family, according to estate papers, deeds, and court records retrieved by the AP. Sweetwater, Alabama. In 1964, the state of Alabama sued Lemon Williams and Lawrence Hudson, claiming the cousins did not rightfully own two 40-acre farms their family had worked in Sweetwater for nearly a century. The land, officials contended, belonged to the state. Circuit Judge Emmett F. Hildreth urged the state to drop its suit, declaring it would result in severe injustice. But when the state refused, saying it wanted income from timber on the land, the judge ruled in favor of the state. The state's internal memos and letters on the case are peppered with references to the family's race. In the same courthouse where the case was heard, the AP located deeds and tax records documenting that the family had owned the land since an ancestor bought the property on January 3rd, 1874. Surviving records also show the family paid property taxes on the farms from the mid-1950s until the land was taken. If you're just joining me, I'm giving you 8 heartbreaking cases where land was stolen from Black Americans through racism, violence, and murder. Lincoln County, Mississippi. White farm owners as whitecaps, known as whitecaps, angered by the prosperity experienced by successful black farmers, often used violence and intimidation to force African Americans off their land. The Brookhaven Leader newspaper reported at the time that Eli Hilson of Lincoln County, Mississippi, got a warning on November 18, 1903, when whitecaps shot up his house just hours after his newborn baby was born. Hilson ignored the warning. A month later, the 39-year-old farmer was shot in the head as he drove his buggy towards his farm, the newspaper said. The horse trotted home, delivering Hilson's body to his wife, Hannah. She struggled unsuccessfully without her husband to raise their 11 children and worked the 74-acre farm, losing the property through a mortgage disclosure in 1905. According to land records, the farm went for $439 to S.P. Oliver, a member of the County Board of Supervisors. Today, the property is assessed at $61,642. Jasper County, Mississippi. In Jasper County, Mississippi, according to historical records, the KKK, the terrorist organization named the KKK, resentful that African Americans were buying and profiting from land, regularly attacked black-owned farms, burned houses, lynched black farmers, and chased black landowners away. On the night of September 10, 1932, 15 white terrorists, torched the courthouse in Paulding, where property records for the eastern half of Jasper County, then predominantly black, were stored. Records of the predominantly white western half of the county were safe in another courthouse miles away. The door to Paulding Courthouse's safe, which protected the records, usually locked, was found open with most of the records reduced to ash. Suddenly, it conveniently became unclear who owned a big piece of Jasper County. In December 1938, the Masonite Corporation, a wood product company and one of the largest landowners in the area, was granted a clear title to 9,581 acres of land, which had since yielded millions of dollars in natural gas, timber, and oil, according to state records. From the few property records that remain, the AP was able to document that at least 204.5 of those acres were acquired by Masonite after black farmers were driven off by the terrorist organization called the KKK. At least 850,000 barrels of oil have been pumped from this property, according to state oil and gas records and figures from Petroleum Technology Transfer Council. Today, the land is owned by International Paper, which acquired Masonite in 1988. You say black people don't deserve reparations? So you say, oh, that's just the past. Well, remember my analogy about the computer, the stolen computer? That's any piece of stolen artifact. You steal something, if it's stolen and someone else acquires it, and that person later figures out that you own it, that person has the right to recoup his or her property. That's the law. So why doesn't that apply to former people who lived in the South? Look, these are just 8. Okay? These are just 8 stories. Remember, when we started this, there were multiple stories. Okay? Even right here. See, we didn't even mention Elaine. Think about it. Let me read this paragraph again for you. In 2001, results from an 18-month investigation of black land lost in America were published by the Associated Press. It turned up 107 of these land takings. 57 were violent. The other cases involved trickery and legal manipulations. So in other words, 57 black landowners lost their land. They died because their land was stolen from them with the help of authorities. And the other 50, they were tricked or they manipulated. Just like you heard the story of the guy who owned the farm loan agency, and then his friend apparently owned the bank, or excuse me, he owned the property by which they had to rent tractors and things of that nature. So friend A would withhold the loans from black farmers so that they would go in default on the equipment that they had gotten from his friend B. And then friend B would go in and foreclose on their property. Man, I almost cussed right there. I almost cussed right there. That was some low down stuff. And you say black people don't deserve reparations. So you say that was in the past, right? Let me give you another example that's a little bit more current. Let me give you this example. Because see, I know a lot of you all want to pretend like, hey, that stuff was in the past, we've changed, da 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 da. Let me just read this. Black farmers. By the way, this is from the Commercial Appeal, the local paper in the city of Memphis. Black farmers seed company mediation hits impasse in suit alleging fraud. After 4 months of mediation between the $3 billion value Stein Seed Company and a collaborative of 5 black farmers affiliated with the Memphis-based Black Farmers and Agriculturalist Association, has ended without resolution. The Iowa-based seed company requested federal court judge John Folks rule on a motion to dismiss the case as the deadline for mediation came to close Friday. At this time, the parties have not reached an agreement on settlement. Lawyers for Stein wrote in a mediation status report, initially scheduled to wrap up by March 15th. The judge's deadline for mediation extended to April 5th. No court date has been set. The black farmers could be headed for a trial with the billion-dollar seed giant. Filed in April 2018, the group's lawsuit alleges fraud and discrimination involving soybean seeds a Stein representative sold the farmers. After meeting with the representatives at a trade show in Memphis in 2017, the farmers ordered certified genetically modified Stein seeds, but were instead given an inferior substitute, they allege. Since news of the case made a splash in July 2018, Stein has asserted the farmers' allegations have no merit. In a statement, company president Myron Stein vowed to fight for the suit's dismissal while continuing to serve all our customers with the highest degree of integrity and respect. Stein takes seriously any allegations of unlawful, improper, or discriminatory conduct and is disturbed by baseless allegations leveled against the company. Upon learning of these claims, the company took swift action to conduct an internal investigation, which has not revealed any evidence that would support these allegations. Now, think about this for a moment. Why would Stein move into mediation if, in fact, they did not sell these black farmers bad seed? Now, remember, I just read you 8 cases of deception and subterfuge that white people did to black farmers and black landowners. This case began in 2017. So if Stein was not guilty of panning off bad seed to these black farmers, why would you go into mediation? Oh, to minimize your public relations image or the hit to your public relations image? Well, I would argue that, look, if someone came to me right now and offered me $1 million and asked me who was a seed company that bought seed, I'd lose that million. So what public relations image are you trying to maintain? Now, you may have other interests, I understand that. But I would argue that if Stein was not guilty, Stein wouldn't be mediating with these black farmers. Okay? Let me say that again. If you're not guilty, you're not going to mediate. See, mediation typically says, okay, let's come to an agreement. Let's accept that I did this and you did that, and then let's sign a NDA and let's move on. So apparently, the black farmers weren't agreeing with what Stein wanted to do, because I imagine Stein wanted to say, "Hey, we didn't sell any bad seed." This was an attempt by Stein and others to do no more than what they were doing to our people back at the turn of the century, the 19th century and the 20th century. So when you say to me that we don't deserve reparations, pick a story. Pick a story. Oh, black people deserve more than reparations. And that's our black fact for today.
To Black Focus Radio for more dynamic black facts, our culture, our history, our people on joynetradio.com.
And if you'd like to if you've got a black fact, let me know. And you can also sponsor Dynamic Black Facts. Call me up at 855-525-5683 or simply hit me up on my cell phone at 615-554-0568. Okay. All right, so a couple of things I want to talk about today. And let's see, we're going to talk about the police a lot today. And I know police, when they hear this show right off the bat, they want to think that, oh, he hates police. No, I don't. I just hate bad police. And apparently across this country, we got some bad ones. And nobody's doing anything about it. And more importantly, police unions are supporting these bad cops. Right here in Little Rock and across this country. And it's sad. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about supporting other racist businesses. If you have not seen the video of the Asian man who apparently has this black kid by his arm, and when people try to move in to help this young black kid, the Asian guy waves a pistol at them. Have y'all seen that video? It's disturbing to me, to say the least. Why is an Asian man abusing a black child and waving a pistol so no one can help him? Well, apparently this is what happened. We don't know for sure, but apparently this young boy was in the guy, according to the Asian guy, and right now I don't trust Asians. I don't believe a word he says. Sorry. I don't believe a word he says. Here's why. Because Asians are racist. Okay? In fact, Asians are the most racist people on the planet next to white folks. All you have to do is go out and look at some of the, in fact, just do a Google. Just do a Google. Just Google Asian racist or racism in Asia. And there will be all kinds of pictures of anti-racist garbage or racist garbage. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at an article right now that says how Asian immigrants learn anti-blackness from white culture and how to stop it. That's just one article that I pulled up. This is, see, even Asians are infected with white supremacy. I often say, and I've often said on this show, that any immigrant who has come to this country post 1965 don't understand what black people did for them. That's why I laugh at Asians when they're racist. Because if it wasn't for black people marching in the South, having dogs sicked on them, water cannons turned on them, being hung, being lynched, disappearing without a trace, only to have their bodies turned up later on, being accused of something that they didn't do, their communities being destroyed, Asians would be in a terrible position right now. And my argument is that many Asians don't understand that. They don't get that. So when I see an Asian being racist towards a black person, I am overly offended. In fact, when I see any minority, any immigrant, whether you Arab, whether you're Asian, whether you Filipino, it doesn't matter. I get overly offended. And you know what? You all should too as well. But this guy has this little black boy waving a gun, and he claims that the boy threw a bottle in his business. From the accounts that I read, he ran and chased the boy down and literally dragged him back to his business with a gun so nobody could assist the boy. I got a problem with that, bro. I don't care what the boy did. I don't care what he did. And what I'm saying to you all is that every time you spend your money at one of those businesses, they are going in the back room laughing at you and thinking about how stupid you are. Yeah, they are. And you are stupid. Every time you go into one of their businesses, and we've seen over and over again, whether it's their women, whether it's their men, they discriminate against black people. You know, it's so funny because I told a story a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was maybe a month ago, where, you know, now the Chinese are moving into various parts of Africa, right? And in this one, and I want to say it was Nigeria, this Chinese guy opens up a Chinese restaurant in Nigeria and says no blacks allowed? Huh? Wait a minute. You just opened up a business in Nigeria. You're Chinese, and you said no blacks allowed? Are you serious? Yeah. What does that tell you? If you look at some of their national, some of their pictures of blacks and the racist caricatures that they post and that they display openly, yeah, they're racist. And, and it's funny, over the weekend, this came up, someone asked me, why are they so racist towards black people? And this conversation has come up in different arenas over the weekend. Let me tell you why. So let's say, for instance, you live in a vacuum and you believe that you are the stuff. You've been the stuff. And then all of a sudden you decide that you want to take your stuff elsewhere. And you begin to explore, as the Europeans began around the 12th century. I think the Portuguese were some of the early explorers from Portugal. They sail into Africa. And they see all these beautiful statues, pyramids. They see all of this language and culture. They try to say, well, we did this. Well, the Africans say, well, we did that a century ago. What else you got for us? They realized that, hey, we're not who we thought we were. Okay? That's a Dennis Green quote. Y'all remember the head football coach, Dennis Green? We're not who we thought we were. And they become jealous. And they began to destroy everything that was ahead of them, at least to try and prove that they were the better of the races of humankind. Not understanding that their destruction, their wake of destruction, would last for centuries, and eventually the world would know, mankind would know, just how evil you were to a welcoming people. That's where all this comes from. They are angry. It's kind of like the bad child who mama and daddy did everything for little Johnny. Sent him to the best schools, bought him cars, the best clothes, but Johnny was ungrateful. Y'all know we all, well, fortunately for me, I don't have any children that way. But there are friends that I know who have children that way. And you may have a child that no matter what you did for that child, even today as a grown person, is ungrateful. We've seen, I have relatives like that, trust me. That's what they are. Asians, Arabs, Hispanics, and whites. Out of all that the African nation did for them and this world, they are ungrateful. So now what they're doing is they are attacking the parent. Y'all get that, right? Y'all follow my logic? So when you look at why are white people so ungrateful, why are they so angry at black people, I think they're just ungrateful. They're shocked. They're stunned that all of the things that they claim to have done, they really didn't do. And now history is slapping them right in the face. Because thanks to Facebook and social media, now you can go out and research for yourself. I don't have to go, although I give you a book list, I don't have to go and tell you to read this book. Now you can go and read for yourself. You don't have to go, the thousands of dollars that I spent buying books for my enlightenment and edification and education about myself and my people and world history, all that money I spend on books, you can do it. But a lot of it you can go and simply research it on Facebook. Research it on the interweb. You can do it as well. That's why a lot of people are angry. That's why. So when you look at that video, and by the way, that I think I posted that video on my wall. When you look at that video, you should be, look, you know what? I'm going to be totally honest with you. I ate Chinese for the first time in about 2 years, about a month ago. Did you hear what I just said? I'm going to be honest with you. I could have prepared it myself, but I wanted something quick. I was on the run. I kept saying, well, what do I want to eat? And I had Chinese on the brain. So I went to a Chinese restaurant. First time in 2 years. I'm probably not going to go back for another 2 years. Because I'm done supporting people and carrying water for people who don't carry water for us. I've said that over and over again, and I'm going to continue to say it over and over again. And I've made some people mad. But black people, over the decades, have fought and died for your rights. Everybody's rights. And black people is not getting anything in return. Because see, when we march against or fight against voter suppression, that voter suppression affects Asians, it affects Latinos, it affects Arabs. But I rarely see them come support us. That's why I'm not marching for LGBTQ or whatever y'all call it. I don't care. Number one, I'm not lesbian or gay. Number one. And then number two, I've watched and seen multiple people from that persuasion be racist as hell. Not an exaggeration, that's fact. And you have too. So why do I care about their rights? And by the way, if you're black and you're in that category, then I really don't care about your rights. Because here's the thing. You were black before you were gay. And at the end of the day, I don't know what your sexual persuasion is unless you make it known to me. So I'm going to view you as a black person first, not a gay person. So I'm not marching for your rights. I don't really care about them. So I don't mean to be cold. I believe everybody is a human being. I believe everybody has a right to exist in this country called America. But I'm not marching for your rights. I'm not posting stuff on my wall about your rights. In fact, I've had people post stuff on my wall about LBGT. Some of it I take down. Not because I'm anti-gay. I'm just not carrying water for that organization, for that group of people. There are too many things that need to be done in the black community for us to be worrying about them. Too many. Our people are dying at alarming rates. And we out there marching to Pretoria for some other cause that won't even help us. Did I just channel an old childhood song, Marching to Pretoria? I'm just not going to do it. Now, I know some of you out there, well, you can call me homophobic. I'm not. My eldest brother was gay. Loved him to death. Remember I told you the story last week about him giving me the iPod after his death, leaving the iPod for me after his death. He left it specifically for me because he knew I loved music. So no, I'm not homophobic. I'm just simply saying I'm through marching for everybody but black folks. If we as black people spend as much time focusing on what we need to get done, not symbolic stuff, but things that are important to us. And next hour we're going to talk about, because this police brutality stuff is gotten out of hand. If we as black folks spend as much time marching for things that benefit us, where would we be today? I said last week, what if we had as much fervor as we do for sororities and fraternities? Think about that. I don't have anything against sororities or fraternities. But the energy that is paid towards, by the way, a Greek organization that is not even based black, you see how white supremacy works? They got you worshiping Greek organizations and they're not even based in Africa. What if we just change the focus? What if black women spend as much time building the community as they do going to church? Because you know there are more black women in church than there are black men, right? What if we channeled all of that energy to black purpose, to black causes? Where will we be today? I laugh when I see black women marching for white women when it comes to equality, when that's not going to affect you. You think it is, but it isn't. White women only elicited your services because of your commitment to the civil rights struggle. And they realized the power of black women. So here's what early feminists did. They looked out and saw the movement, the black movement, and saw the power of the black woman. And they said, because their movement wasn't getting any traction, and said, hey, we need black women in our organization. So what did that do? Y'all started moving into the black, quote unquote, feminist movement, and didn't realize that your black children were still being discriminated against. Didn't care about you being a feminist. I'm just being real. Well, of course, I'm doing this every day. Give an example. Here's a researchers say black female professor reveals startling truth that white women made up 40% of the slave owners. Did y'all know that? I told you all that white women were just as evil as their slave-owning husbands. More so in some respect, because they were angry that they knew that their husbands were going out to the slave quarters raping little girls and impregnating them. They knew that. And quite often, how they ended up owning much of the slaves is because if husbands died, they left their properties to their wives. By the way, I posted this article on my wall as well. I'm just being real with you. It's time out for us to stop carrying water for everyone else but our people. That's why I read that stuff about those 8 towns that were raided and killed, those black communities. Remember last week I read about the black preacher in Mississippi. It happened right here in Elaine, Arkansas. In parts of Florida, they would take the babies newborn babies from black women, and they would use babies as alligator bait. Thus the phrase gator bait. I don't use that phrase. You shouldn't either. Did you know that's where that came from? 855-525-5683 is the number. When we come back, before I go, this morning they had a rally on the Capitol for prison reform. Let me ask a question. Why don't we do more to keep our children out of prison than we do when they get in there? Now, I know the system is stacked against them, but think about it from this perspective. If we defended our communities with our dollars, then I would argue that we could keep at least half of our children out of prison. Even with the current laws that they have on the books, even with the current racism that goes on in the courts and in the police departments, I would argue that if we defended our communities with our dollars, we could keep half of those children out of prison. And then we wouldn't have to go up on the state capitol and beg white people for reform. In fact, those businesses, those prisons would go out of business. We're doing this all wrong, folks. I'm not saying prison reform is not needed. I'm simply saying we're doing this all wrong. And at some point, someone needs to wake up and say, hey, let's flip the script. Back in a moment. It's Black Focus Radio.
Hey friends, Father's Day is right around the corner, and Coleman's Dynamic Products is offering a dynamic gift just for Dad. Pick 6 for Dad. Any 6 items in my product line. Coleman's Dynamic Rib Rub, Dust, Juice, Nuts, Batter, you name it, all for only $29.95 plus shipping and handling. Upgrade to Pick 10 for only $39.95. Pick 6 for Dad. You must call 615-554-0568 to get this dynamic Father's Day special. Dad and you will be glad you did. Each purchase receives a Coleman's Dynamic downloadable cookbook. We want to say Happy Father's Day for all the great fathers out there. And while you enjoy your day, don't forget to bake it, grill it, smoke it, oh yeah, with Coleman's Dynamic product. Pick 6 or pick 10. You must call 615-554-0568 to get this dynamic Father's Day special.
This is attorney Danielle Walker from the Walker Law Firm. Are you drowning in debt? Is your debt becoming unmanageable? Are you struggling to make ends meet? It might be time to consider bankruptcy options. Call me at 501-374-1448 and let me provide you with the professional legal guidance and help protect you from foreclosure, harassing bill collectors, repossession, wage garnishments, and more. I have a proven record of serving clients just like you for over 20 years. I'm conveniently located downtown Little Rock at 323 Center Street, Suite 1020. Call today for a free, no obligation consultation. 501-374-1448, 501-374-1448, 501-374-1448. This is attorney Danielle Walker from the Walker Law Firm, and let me help you.
The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
All right, welcome back to the second hour of the show. It's Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. This hour, we're going to talk a lot about the police. But before I do that, I want to talk about quickly black male-female relationships. And the reason I'm talking about this today is because I want to show you how the media has even colored the view of black men through the eyes of our women. Because I hear it all the time. You do too, whether you're male or female. Ain't no good black men out here. Where are the good black men? Yeah, they're here. Part of the reason is you may not be able to find one because you're probably no good. No offense, okay? Because there are plenty of good black men out here. You know, I've talked about the study that came out a couple of years ago through Harvard that was published in the Los Angeles Times that said, you know, they used to say that black men don't take care of their children. We knew that was a lie. I knew that was a lie. Because as I fought for fathers' rights in the state of Tennessee, I saw black man after black man trying to see their children. I saw black man after black man picking up the phone, calling me and saying, hey, Brother Coleman, can you help me? I'm trying to see my son. I want to see my daughter. I want to be able to go to school. I had a friend who died from cancer, Sean, from Nashville. I won't call his last name. And he died trying to see his children. Hello? So the lie had been purported that, hey, black men don't take care of their children. Well, the lie also had been purported that black men don't take care of their children and all their women do is get on welfare. Not understanding the facts that there are more white folks on welfare than there are any other race of people. More importantly, our personal struggles does not mean that the entire group is certain ways. Because I would argue that if you had an issue with your spouse or your child's father, or if you're a man, your child's mother, then after all, you did pick them. So if you're saying that that person's no good, what does that say about you? But in that study, it showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that black fathers take care of their children more so than any other race of people. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I remember talking to a young lady who was making the claims that all black men are this, that, and the other. And I quoted that study, and she screamed me to the floor. It's not right. It's not. Something must be wrong. Even with facts, she facing facts, and then pulling up the report and going through the report, she still would not believe that black men take care of their children. She still would not. So even now, you hear ain't no good black men out here. Well, maybe it's something you're not doing or something you're doing. And then the other thing is black men, brothers I know that are single, they taking care of their business. They ain't got time for that mess. You might walk around with your butt all out, hair in different colors. Most real brothers, they laughing at you, man. I'm being honest with you. They laughing at you. And then if you fine or if you got a nice body, they don't want you for a woman. They want you to sleep with, but they'll move on. They'll look for that woman who is more traditional. And you'll be saying ain't no good black men out here. But I want to read this study for you real fast. Read this. This is from CNN. Despite the portrait of race relations that often highlight the negative, especially regarding black men, many Americans, according to a 2006 study by the Washington Post, Kaiser Family Foundation, and Harvard University, believed that crime, unemployment, and poverty are endemic to African American men. The truth is that most black men will not be incarcerated or not unemployed or are not poor, even if black men are more likely than other men to experience these outcomes. In fact, millions of black men are flourishing in America today. One new report, Black Men Making It in America, spotlights two pieces of particular good news about the economic well-being of black men. First, the share of black men in the poverty has fallen from 41% in 1960 to 18% today. Second, the most and more importantly, the share of black men in middle or upper class as measured by the family income has risen from 38% in 1960 to 57% today. In other words, about 1 in 2 black men in America have reached the middle class or higher. Wait a minute, that's half. And y'all can't find a good black man? Did you just hear what I just said? This is not David Coleman coming up with I haven't looked at some graph and came up with my own analysis. This is analysis from the people who made this study. Do I need to go back and read that again, black women? See, because you all have bought into the media as well, the demonization of black men. You may not think it is, but you bought into it as well. Who did this study? Did the Urban League do this study? No, that's a black organization. Y'all wouldn't believe them. Did the NAACP do this study? No, that's a black organization. Y'all wouldn't believe them. Let me tell you who did this study. That way you can believe them. And by the way, you can go out on my wall and pull this article up, because if you still can't believe it, you can go read it for yourself. The organizations that did this study was the credible Washington Post, the Kaiser Family Foundation, and Harvard University. These are white organizations saying that the lie that you all have been living about black men was nothing more than, guess what? A lie. It's time to stop that craziness. It's crazy. Let me just read this graph for you again, so in case you all didn't get it. First, the share of black men in poverty has fallen from 41% in 1960 to 18% today. Second, and more importantly, the share of black men in the middle class or upper class, as measured by their family income, has risen from 38% in 1960 to 57%. In other words, about 1 in 2 black men in America have reached the middle class or higher. Now, see, the problem y'all hearing that feminist stuff. See, I told you, black women, that black men moving on, they doing their thing. But see, y'all caught up in that white feminist stuff. It ain't about y'all. See, black men and women came over here on the same ships, in feces and urine, in regurgitation, blood, anguish, sweat, tears. We were all strapped down on the same boats, at least most of us. We came here together, and the only way that we're going to rise as a community is that we've got to stay together. And we cannot allow infiltrators to come in and split us apart. And that's what all of these different organizations are doing. Planned Parenthood, the feminist movement, Me Too, all these crap organizations, they don't give a damn about the black family. They don't give a damn about black men and black women and black children. They care about their agenda. We as a black community don't have time to be worrying about their agendas. There's plenty of work to be done in our community. And this story speaks to how white supremacy and racism has colored a view of black men to the point where everybody and their mom is talking about how black men are no good. But the numbers, the data shows something different. Numbers don't lie. The data shows something different. So if you believe it long enough, that old thing, if you believe something long enough, it'll become truth. I'm thinking about that M. Night Shyamalan movie where they were afraid of the color red. I've forgotten the name of it. And they were set off in this village. And the village was hidden away from civilization. And all around the village, there was these giant trees and hedges. And you couldn't go beyond the trees. And this whole village lived their lives being afraid of the color red. That's kind of what the black community is today. We're in this village, hidden by trees. Facts and truth are out beyond the trees, but we are afraid to venture beyond the trees. And so we sit in that village and we languish in stupidity to our detriment of our men, of our women, of our children, and of our families and communities. You know, I said last hour, I said, look, we could solve a lot of the problems with prisons if we simply spent money in our own communities. There would be no need for prison reform marches if we spent money in our own communities. In fact, our money would be our sword and our shields. But because we are infected with white supremacy, we simply don't get it. 855-525-5683 is the number. Now let me make sure I've covered all the other stories I want to cover before I get on this police thing. Okay? Let's make sure I got that. Yep. Okay. All right, I'll cover that. Last week, you may have heard me talk about the official that was issuing racist slurs. And apparently, it was so offensive to one of his friends. His friends recorded it. Texas high school referee defends racist rant because he watches bet. A longtime high school football referee has been suspended by the Texas Association of Sports Officials for the rest of the 2019 season after audio surfaced of his racist rant during a phone call with a jilted colleague. Mike Atkinson, who has been a referee for 45 years, was exposed in a lawsuit filed by Joe McCall, a longtime high school and college official who believed that he was unfairly removed from a position within Tasso, according to the Chronicle. Michael's suit included Atkinson's racist remarks, which came within the past year, on a phone call with another high school official who had a dispute with Tasso. Atkinson has fielded all-white crews for games for the majority of his career. He admitted to using the dreaded N-word during a conversation with McCall but denies being a racist because he's an avid watcher, get this, of BET. Yeah, he really said that. They're putting all this out there, and I'm a big-time racist and all this, Atkinson said. For the people that know me, they know that's not true. He wants folks to know that he does not regularly use the N-word. He's a damn liar. If you don't regularly use something, do something, then it just doesn't pop out in conversation. He goes on to say, I know what it sounds like when you hear those clips, but I am talking to the person who made the recordings in a private conversation, and he's using the word, and I said it a couple of times. I'm a jokester. I like to listen to things. I watch black entertainment television all the time because I think it's hilarious. I may have picked up something. I don't know. Atkinson told the Chronicle he had no issues having a black person on his crew if he could find a good one So because he watches BET, he openly uses the N-word. Now, if y'all believe that crap, I got a boat to sell you that's sitting on the river right beside my house. And I'll be honest with you that I don't have a boat and I don't live by a river. But I'll sell it to you anyway. And you know, there are some black people who will listen to this and say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, see, that makes sense. There's a reason why this suit was filed. And there's a reason, and even though you look, what you do in private really dictates who you really are. Okay? It's kind of reversed when you got kids, right? So your kids, when you have them and you teach them how to obey and do the things that you think they should be doing, they go outside your four walls, your home, and then they act totally different. One of the things that I used to tell my children, and one of the things that my mom used to tell me, is that don't embarrass me in public. You can come home and act a fool, but you go out in public and you act a fool, it's going to be a problem. That's why, if you all know, if you ever got your butt beat at church, you know why you got your butt beat at church. It wasn't that you were disrespecting the law. It was the fact that you were embarrassing your parent, your mama. And after that beating that you got in the church bathroom, that everybody in the sanctuary heard you screaming, I bet you didn't get another one of those beatings, did you? I bet you didn't act a fool. But this is the opposite here. When you're an individual, see, there are a lot of things that you do at your home that we don't know about. And if we knew, then people kind of look at you side eye, right? Right? So if this guy is making racial remarks, using the N-word on a private conversation, apparently the guy who made the recording was so offended, he said, hey, and he must have known that the guy was going to do it. You know, this wasn't some impromptu wording here. You had to know that the guy was, because apparently he had been using the terminology before. He had to, because the guy knew, hey, I'm going to record him because I know he's going to make he's going to say some racial epithets. He had to know that. So for this guy to sit here and tell us, to blow smoke up our butt and tell us it's a campfire, break out the marshmallows, he must really think we're stupid. But you know what? Some of us are. Because I can see black folks now, oh, well, you know, yeah, that makes sense. See, we always looking for the color thing. See. Now, if you're one of those black folks that believe that, my brothers and sisters, you really are an idiot. And now we understand why racism continues to flourish in America. Because until black people stand up and say, we're not taking this anymore, and we're willing to do anything by any necessary means, it's going to continue. It's going to continue. Now, what are the odds that this white group of officials went and officiated a game against a black team and a white team? What are the odds that they favored their calls towards the white team? If you've ever played any sports, you've been in that position. Especially high school sports, 855 525 5683 is the number. One other note, and we'll move on to this police discussion because we need to discuss it. Go out and read the article, and I won't go through it, but go out and read the article where it says, new DNA proves African Americans are, in fact, indigenous aborigines of America. Oops. Now, who been out there doing some research? Darn it, stop it, says the white man. Y'all doing too much research. Stop. It's embarrassing us. It's making us look like liars. Oops. It makes all the sense in the world. It makes all the sense in the world. Because you do know at one point there were only 4 continents, right? And those continents were joined together. If in fact that everything that we know, and I won't say if in fact, I know it's a fact based on unequivocal evidence that everything that we know about life began in Africa. Everything. We know that. Africa is the only continent that every mineral appears on that continent. There's no other continent in the world like Africa. That's why it was raided. That's why it was raped, not only of its people, but of its resources, and it's still being done that way today. So if in fact everything evolved in Africa and the 4 continents were joined together, and we know now that the indigenous people of Australia were black, of Asia Minor was black, then doesn't it stand to reason that the indigenous people of America was black? Because all they did was walk to America from Africa when the continents were joined together. And then when they had the shifting of the tectonic plates and the earthquakes, and the continents moved away from each other, those indigenous people who walked from Africa still lived here in America. I sit here right now and I'm looking at Native Americans, as they call them, pictures of them, and I'm going to be honest with you, if I didn't know they were Native Americans, they'd be black. Research is a wonderful thing, isn't it? See, I talk about these things enough because I want your children to understand that if you want them to be successful, see, I am a firm believer in this, that part of the reason that black children kill one another on the streets, these young boys who get in these gangs, why is it so easy to go up and blow the brains out of another black man? This is just my conjecture here. You may not agree with it. But I understand one thing is that many of those young black males in these gangs, they join these gangs to have a sense of self, to belong. They are probably living in environments where people have told them all their lives that they are nothing. They will mount to nothing. You won't mount to a hill of beans. So they join these gangs in hopes of creating some type of love and family environment, and they commit their lives to this false sense of camaraderie. But see, my argument is this. What would happen if young black brothers and sisters, for that matter, knew that where they came from? Not that they came from slaves. I don't use that argument. And every time I hear someone try to use that argument, I always explain to them why they should not. What if they knew they came from kings and queens and princesses? What if they knew they came from people who built the pyramid and the Sphinx, people who gave us the number system, people who charted the solar system long before there was even a telescope developed, people who created medicine? The list goes on and on. What if a young black boy knew he came from something other than the projects? I would argue that if they did, they would stop killing each other. Now, one other story, and we'll talk about these police. I want to talk about Muhammad Noor. Last story is the Catholic Church spent $10.6 million to lobby against legislation that would benefit victims of sex abuse. Hello? So last Friday we talked about the the Southern Baptist Convention and how they had covered up sexual abuse. We already knew about the Catholic Church, but now we know that your legislators, wherever they may be, they're not too concerned about children being raped by grown men. If someone can give you $10.6 million, remember, where are all these Catholic priests going to jail? Where's the jail for Catholic priests? Where's the jail for Southern Baptist Convention ministers? Where are they? Your politicians are selling you down the river for 30 pieces of silver, and y'all are continually voting them in. And you say, oh, well, that's why I don't vote. Well, guess what? Because you don't vote, you're continually voting them back in. All right? 855-525-5683. So I want to read, I'm going to give you some headlines for a couple of stories. For the rest of the show, we're going to talk about police. And police are not going to be happy. They're never happy when you point out their inconsistencies and outright lies. And unfortunately, this entire country has a plague, and it's called the police department. Here's a question. Give up your password or go to jail. Police push legal boundaries to get into your cell phone. So this story is about a young man who was arrested. The police demanded him to give them his cell phone password. And see, now it used to be that police could easily crack your cell phone. Now with the new iPhones and all these new phones, it's not as easy as it once was to crack a cell phone code. In fact, it costs thousands of dollars to even have that type of equipment at police stations. So this particular group of police demanded that this young man give up his cell phone password or go to jail. This young man refused to do so, and he ended up spending 41 days in jail. Now, part of that was because they found some weed in his car and some CBD oil, all illegal. But more importantly, it was about him refusing to give up his cell phone. So the police went, for whatever reasons, they felt like that there was something important on this guy's cell phone. So they went and got a warrant from a judge, and the young man still refused, and they found him in contempt of court. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you. Police have no business in my cell phone without probable cause. Just like you have no business coming into my home without probable cause. We've seen Supreme Court now pass a state that a person's trash is still private, whereas the police, there are questionable circumstances where you can go through a person's trash and get evidence now. It didn't used to be that way. So all of a sudden now police are saying, hey, if I arrest you, I can get in your cell phone. No, you can't. You're not getting in mine. And apparently this young man knew his rights. Again, we've been talking about this for about 2 weeks now. It is important for you to sit. We might need to start in our churches, start having classes about know your rights. We might need to start doing that. Because so many of our young men are giving up their rights and ending up in jail. I posted an article last week, although I didn't get into it, about young, poor black men pleading guilty to charges that they're not guilty to, just so they can get it over with. I knew this guy in Memphis who got into a fight with his girlfriend. His girlfriend initiated the fight. She came out on the wrong end of the stick. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, he shouldn't have hit a woman. Well, wait a minute. I disagree with you. If that woman is beating on you and you at some point you have to defend yourself. See, my argument has been for decades is we always hear, tell your sons, teach your sons not to hit on women. Well, we ought to be teaching our daughters not to hit on men. Yeah, we see that all the time. We're seeing it on posts, everything. Men walking away, women defending it. You should keep your hands to yourself, period. But this young man had had enough of his wife. She was physically abusing him. And he had had enough, and they got into a fight, and he won, which he would have. They took him to court, arrested him for domestic violence. The prosecuting attorney came to him and asked him, hey, tell you what, I want to get this case over with. I want you to plead not guilty, and if you don't do anything for a year, it'll fall off your record. They call it diversion. Young man called me and said, Mr. Coleman, I've thought about what they're talking about. Said, I didn't jump on my wife. I didn't initiate the fight. She came at me after trying to ward her off and defending myself. I got tired and I hit her, and it hurt her. If nothing more, it was self-defense. Young man didn't have an attorney. So the prosecuting attorney kept trying to get him to plead for diversion. Young man said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to plead guilty to something that I didn't do. Now, a side note, you're seeing a lot of these young men or men who are being exonerated because they pled guilty or they were coerced into saying something they did that they really didn't do. So the prosecuting attorney told the young man, hey, look, if you don't plead guilty, I'm gonna fight to put you in jail for 5 years. Young man said, okay, but I'm not pleading guilty to something that I didn't do. So the trial went on. The young lady who was supposed to testify against him was supposed to be in court the morning of the trial. He sat in court. They called his name, and he was one of the first on the docket. Prosecuting attorney stood up and said, Your Honor, my witness isn't here yet. I would appreciate it if you gave me about 30 minutes. Now, typically, had the young man had an attorney, at that point, his attorney could have argued to dismiss the case. But because he didn't have an attorney, they tried to take advantage of him and give the young lady more time to show up. The lady never showed up. After the judge had went through the entire docket, it was about 30 people on the docket. They came back to this young man, and he looked at the prosecuting attorney and said, hey, we're going to dismiss this case. This gentleman has sat in here quietly and patiently waiting for your witness. Apparently your witness is not going to show. We're dismissing the case. Now here's the irony behind that. That had that young man went ahead and said, hey, I want to get this over with. I'll go ahead and plead guilty. That would have been on his record for the rest of his life. Even though he would have completed diversion, once you plead guilty, it's on your record. So this young man wasn't going to plead guilty. And good for him. The point is that you need to know the law, and you ought to be teaching your children the law. Because the police will certainly abuse you if you don't know the law. That's what happened to the Central Park Five. That's why I was a little tough on the parents. Not because, see, ignorance of the law is no excuse. We grow up in an environment where we run in and out of the law all the time because of the racism in this system. Not teaching your children basic common sense about the law is dangerous. If we don't learn anything else, take what you saw in when they see us and sit your son and your daughter down and say, here's what you say when the police ask you a question. I have no comment. I would like my mother and an attorney. I don't care how they scream at you. I don't care how they holler at you. You do nothing but understand what the Constitution says. And you have a right to be silent. And had those boys been silent, we may not have a Central Park 5 case. So again, I'm against you out there who are talking about telling your kids to obey everything a police officer says. No. If you teach them the Constitution, and if everybody that stopped start mouthing the Constitution, then the police will understand that I have an informed public. The only way someone can take advantage of you is that you're being uninformed. And they're taking advantage of our children, sending them to juvenile court, sending them to jail, sending them to prison because they're uninformed. They may have opened their mouths when they could have kept them shut. Well, wait a minute. You say, well, you shouldn't be telling kids not to talk to police. Well, what happens when police get in trouble? They don't talk. Why should we do anything less than what the police does? The police, they form a blue line, and they all stand behind it. And no matter what goes on, they say nothing. Except if the police officer is a black police officer. He being Muhammad Noor. Because, Muhammad Noor now gets 12.5 years for the murder of Christine Damon, the white woman in Minnesota. When was the last time you heard of a police officer getting 12 years for killing a black person? I'll wait. We've seen video evidence of police murdering black people in cold blood. We saw one right here in Little Rock, Bradley Blackshire. I drove by that spot this weekend, not purposely, I just happened to be in the area. And when I looked over to the left, you know what I thought about? I didn't think about the barbershop that was there. I didn't think about the coffee shop that's there. I thought about Bradley Blackshire being hung. But there's an article out on CNN, and it's entitled, and it's an op-ed that says, and this is by Joy Jackson. He's a legal analyst. Muhammad Noor's sentence raises uncomfortable questions about race. And I'm going to read a few graphs of this because it's important. Because if you're telling me, police, that you are above the law, why doesn't it apply to black people? Why doesn't it apply to a black police officer who was clearly scared? And every time a white cop uses, I was in fear of my life, hey, that's the get out of jail free card for them. But apparently it's not for a black Islamic Somali American. This is wrong on all counts. The sentencing of the former police officer in Minnesota punctuates a case whose ripple effects raise profoundly uncomfortable and unanswered questions about race, policing, and the use of force in the United States. The 12.5-year sentence he received last Friday for a fatal shooting of Justine Ruchak, or Damon, is outrageous and disturbing. Police are seldom, if ever, indicted, much less convicted for shooting African American men. Yet, where the victim is a white woman and the police officer is black, he gets the book thrown at him. This sentence is lengthy and unjust and shows a capitulation by the judge against her oath to administer justice. Muhammad Noor, a 33-year-old Somali American who was serving as a police officer with Minnesota Police Department back on July 15, 2007, had been convicted of murder and manslaughter, according to the media. I've thought and prayed about this for 2 years since since the time I took her life, Noor said before the sentencing. The state had asked for 150 months, while Noor's attorney argued for a probationary sentence. During the hearing, Ruchek's fiance, Don Damon, made an emotional statement. I'm not sure how such a thing could happen to you, to us. Before announcing his fate, Judge Catherine Quintance said, good people sometimes do bad things. A court should never succumb to the desire for vengeance. Officer Noor is the first officer convicted in Minnesota in such a circumstance, and he happens to be black. Coincidence? He had 44 letters submitted to the court which spoke to his character, gentle nature, and community service. His ex-wife even weighed in to inform the court of his humanitarian efforts and kind demeanor, all to none avail. Even a local legislator wrote a letter urging the court to spare him. Nope. During Noor's trial, the jury of 10 men and 2 women heard from 60 witnesses over the course of a month, whose testimony included prosecution and defense use of force. Not surprisingly, those experts offered completely different opinions on whether Officer Noor acted reasonably or discharging a single round of his revolver into the abdomen of Justine Ruchek, who had called 911 to report a possible assault happening in an alley near her home. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll finish this up. All right, I'm sorry about that. From the defense, during Noor's trial, we're talking about the Muhammad Noor sentencing. From the defense perspective, Officer Noor was startled in a dark alley and feared for his life. In that darkness, he perceived a deadly threat as he sat in the passenger seat of the police cruiser and saw someone approaching him and his partner, Matthew Harity, who was way too close for comfort. Officer Noor's contention is that he fired upon the perceived threat in order to protect his life and that of his vulnerable partner, who was a sitting duck in the driver's side. The prosecution countered with a critical question that seemingly said it all. What is threatening about a blonde hair and a pink shirt? Think about that. What is threatening about blonde hair and a pink shirt? So let me ask you a question. If that was black hair and a dark shirt, that's threatening, right? And with that said, we as a society must address the elephant in the room, race. Officer Noor is an African-American man. Ruchek, the victim, a white woman from Australia. Every police shooting, like other cases, turns on its set of facts. The facts are often varied and murky. But despite the factual inconsistencies in some police shooting cases, there is generally one constant: the lack of accountability for the officer firing the weapon. Not in this case. Here, there was an indictment, a prosecution, and a guilty verdict. So here's the obvious question. Did the race of the officer and the victim play a role in the outcome? What are the moral questions involved in the prosecutors invoking the victim's blindness to imply she imposed no threat? How and why is that Noor was convicted? When a white officer shoots an African-American male, the results too often seem like fait accompli. In those instances, the officers are generally not even indicted, much less found guilty at trial. Some may be quick to contradict that claim by pointing to Officer Jason Van Dyke in Chicago, who killed Laquan McDonald August 14, 2014. They may also point to Officer Michael Slager in South Carolina, who killed Walter Scott on April 4, 2015. But both of those examples are false comparisons. And in fact, they're not even close. In the Van Dyke's case, there was a stomach-turning video completely contradicting Van Dyke's narrative as to what occurred. His police record indicated that McDonald was lunging at him, but on camera, Van Dyke is shown firing repeatedly upon McDonald, even as he lies dying on the ground. In the absence of the video, one wonders whether there would have even been a prosecution, much less a conviction. And for his crime, Van Dyke was only sentenced for 6 years and 9 months. In South Carolina, Michael Slager shot Walter Scott in the back and he was running away. Thereafter, he planted evidence, perhaps because the jurors could not believe their lying eyes. His case ended in a mistrial. It was not until the Justice Department intervened and sought a life sentence that Slager pled guilty and accepted 20 years. In Noor's situation, there is no videotape or audio evidence, but Noor and Garrity wore body cameras, but they were not turned on, and Noor did not provide a statement. In such a circumstance, the conviction of a police officer is unheard of. In fact, Mike Freeman, the prosecutor in Hennepin County, where Noor was tried and convicted, could not identify a single instance in Minnesota's history where a police officer was convicted on such a circumstance. Coincidence? In fact, a year before the incident, also in Minnesota, Philando Castile was killed by Officer Geronimo Yanez during a traffic stop. He was shot 7 times, even though he specifically told the officer he had a weapon when he was asked to produce the license and registration. His girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, who was in the passenger seat, looked on in terror, as did her 4-year-old daughter. Officer Yanez was tried on 3 felony counts and acquitted on each. It seems the jury was persuaded that Officer Yanez legitimately feared for his life. The facts would not allow the prosecutor to ask the question that was asked in the Noor's case, namely, what was so threatening about a blonde? The uncomfortable questions about this case don't have good answers, but we must ask them nonetheless. Was Noor afforded the same deference by the jury as his counterparts of a different hue? Unlike other officers involved shooting, this time the person wearing a blue uniform was Somali, African American, and Muslim. Can he be just as frightened as his fellow officers were when they discharged their weapons against unarmed black men? And should a white suspect be viewed as putting a police officer at ease while a black suspect heightens an officer's fear and anxiety? How and why can a prosecutor argue so matter-of-factly that a blonde in a pink shirt is harmless, while a person with coarse hair who happens to be black represents a significant danger? How stereotypical is that? But that was the very argument made here, and it was overwhelmingly successful. Just a few more blocks. Well, at that point, I'll stop right there, because we have a problem with policing in America. Now, let me give you another example. Lori Lightfoot, who is the new mayor of Chicago, she believes that the Chicago Police Department and its union is purposely not doing their job. Let me say that again. The new mayor, Lori Lightfoot, believes that the Chicago Police Department is purposely not doing their job. In her remarks, Lightfoot sought to draw a connection between the weekend carnage and difficulties she is expected to encounter negotiating a new police contract for the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police, which represents thousands of rank and file officers. You know, there were rumors floating around about, and I didn't verify this, but rumors floating around that they were telling their officers, don't do anything over the Memorial Day weekend. Don't intercede. If you see some criminal activity, just lay back. Do nothing. I hope to God that wasn't true, because, oh man, if that happened, there's going to be a reckoning. Did you hear that? The police department, their union, is telling police not to do their job. Hello? There's a problem with policing in America. Now, you all don't want to believe it. You all want to believe that the police are so wonderful. Remember the story last week about the Arizona police chief who got the survey of all the police that were in her department who were racist and making racist comments? There's a problem with policing in America. And part of that is because you all think that a human being is above reproach. See, absolute power corrupts what? Absolutely. And you all have given police in America absolute power to kill, maim, and destroy with impunity. But here's what the Baltimore Police Commissioner said. In one of his early tests as police commissioner, Baltimore, Michael Harrison, a black man, ordered the arrest of a veteran sergeant and said he was deeply disturbed to see the officer take down a bystander for mouthing off. So if you don't know this story, this officer simply beat up this guy and arrested him because the guy smarted off at him. This black police commissioner put him on desk duty and is planning to fire him. Already the local police union is upset with the chief. Because see, the police union thinks officers can get away with murder. Right here in Little Rock, the police union staunchly backed Charles Starks. And in fact, the police union to this day has not even offered an apology to the city of Little Rock for not even coming out and denouncing the fact that white supremacists are coming to Little Rock on July 25th to support Charles Starks. Why would the Little Rock Police Department want support from white supremacists? These are just three stories that I pulled up. These are just three stories that I've talked about, but you've heard story after story. You heard the writer in that piece refer to three stories. White cops are getting off scot-free for murdering black people, and we're seeing it with our own eyeballs. And they talked about Slager in South Carolina. We saw him shoot Walter Scott. We saw him plant evidence, and he still had 3 mistrials. Something is wrong with police. No, let me take that back. Something is wrong with our juries, who are mainly constructed of white people. You know, I might be okay if Muhammad Noor was walking free today. I might be okay if the local police union in Minnesota would have taken up a fund and he would have ended up with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for his legal fees. But we heard none of that for Officer Noor. Why is that? But every time a white cop shoots up and kills a black person, there's money coming out of the yin yang. We have to ask the question. We have to continually ask the questions. What is going on here? And although you might be uncomfortable with the answer because you already know the answer, I know you don't want to admit it, but you already know the answer. What did I say at the beginning of the show? You judge a person, you judge a company, you judge a thing by its history. And as I read those 8 heartbreaking stories All of those stories were sanctioned to some extent by local police. They assisted in taking black people's property. They insisted on they insisted on opening their jails so that white mobs could come in and steal black defendants. They did that purposely. So what are we to do? What are we to do? That's a good question. And it's time for black people, black churches, black civic organizations to sit down and don't broadcast it to the media. Don't tell them, hey, we're going to have a meeting about this. It's time for us to get behind closed doors and start strategizing. Because those without strategy are doomed to failure. And that's why we're failing in our communities. Man, whoo, hot show today. We'll be back tomorrow. We expect Robert in tomorrow as well. You've been listening to Black Focus Radio. I'm Dynamic Dave on joinnedradio.com. Remember, brilliant minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. Which one of those do you have? It's multiple choice. See y'all later. Bye.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'll be scared of walking straight.
You've been listening to Black Focus, where we discuss our issues.
You say what?
You be on fire, I want to get
Hey, you know I gotta bring the rain.
I want fire bread preachers back there.
Thanks for joining me, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.